Lansing's only sports station. The Game, 7:30.
Let's play.
Welcome to Be the Referee with MHSAA registered official Paige Winnie.
We're on the volleyball court today when my teammate's second touch sends the ball towards the bleachers, still on our side of the net. I take off running to attempt to hit it over and jump on the first row of the stands in order to reach it. I am able to volley the ball over the net, and remarkably, it falls to the floor untouched for a point. Or is it? It is not. The bleachers are not a playable area in volleyball, so my hit wouldn't count. It would actually be a point for the other team. Despite my best parkour efforts, it's all for naught. With player safety in mind, there are other unplayable areas in volleyball, including the area behind the benches and the space between the benches and the scorer's table. Before each match, the officials go over playable and unplayable areas with both coaches.
Thanks, Paige. You can be a referee. Go online now to register at MHSAA.com. Be the Referee is a part of the MHSAA network.
The Game, 7:30 a.m. WVFN.
And a pleasant Saturday morning to everyone listening out there on The Game, 7:30 a.m. WVFN and the Lansing Sports Network. This is High School Rewind, the weekly show that recaps the week that was in high school boys and girls basketball. And it's brought to you today and every week by Doubting Industries. Jeff and Chris Metz. If you're wondering what your future holds and you're not going to college, or you found out college just isn't for you, college isn't for everybody, you know. Check out the future that skilled trades can offer you. You'll be surprised. Check them out at doubtingindustries.com. And, of course, by the Lansing Sports Commission. No matter the sport, the Lansing Sports Commission can make your next event your best event. Plan on something greater. Find out more at lansingsports.org. Yes, we will recap the games that occurred this week. There were a lot of invitationals going on the week after Christmas and just before the New Year. We'll go over all the scores from the week that was. There weren't a whole heck of a lot of games, but especially on the girls' side, there were only 2 games this week. There'll be a handful today, but we'll go over all of them for you and give you an update on the standings. Coming up a little bit later, Brian Calloway, prep sports editor of the Lansing State Journal and LSJ.com, but very happy to be joined now by, and it's going to turn into a yearly conversation with the executive director of the Michigan High School Athletic Association. He is Mark Ewell. Mark, thanks so much for coming on. I understand you got to head to Byron Center today to see your daughter Madison, the terrific junior guard at DeWitt High School, play Byron Center. Is that difficult for you going from the executive director of the MHSAA when you oversee, well, or not necessarily, but I guess oversee it, to a degree, oversee over 700 high schools and about that many middle schools, to then just a parent to a high school junior basketball player?
It's interesting. Happy New Year, Brock, by the way.
Same to you.
With Maddie, she's the youngest of our 3. So
Okay.
I think I've gotten pretty good at it at this point of just going to games, trying to sit up in the bleachers by myself and just sitting there and shutting up and watching the game. But it's been great. It's fun watching the DeWitt girls play. It is kind of my last trip around the bases in terms of having a high school athlete. So with her being the last of 3, I've really come to just really cherish every game, every moment, because that sand in the hourglass keeps trickling away.
Yes, you do have the rest of this year and all of next year, too. What a terrific backcourt. What a terrific backcourt Maddie and her teammate Tara Kearns has been. How about that? 3-year starters, and barring injury, they'll be 4-year starters next year. That's pretty good. Bill McCullen's done a terrific job there, for many, many years. Man, what a great program that is.
Bill McCullen is the epitome of what a high school coach should be, from his organization to the way that he treats kids, the way that he communicates, the way that he even interacts with officials. Has just built a wonderful program over the last 30 years. My wife, Marcy, has been a part of Bill's staff now.
Yep.
She's, I believe, in her 20th year is Bill's assistant. And then, it's Tara and Maddie and actually all the kids in that class. They've been just not playing together the last few years. It's been since they were all in 3rd grade, and it's been really neat. The DeWitt team is truly a homegrown team. Yep. There's no kids transferring in. Your kids that you look around in your third grade classroom are the same kids that you're going to be playing with when you're a junior or senior, and that's really cool.
Yep, closed school district. You do have the option to do that in the state of Michigan, even in a school of choice era, which has been the case for, almost 30 years now. Mark Ewell, Executive Director of the MHSAA, joining me. I do have to ask you about the football finals. I haven't talked to you really since then. I have seen you at a few games, but I haven't had a chance to talk to you. I got to tell you, a tremendous, not just the 11-player finals, but the 8-player finals. I understand one of those games went right down to the final seconds. I want to ask you about that, but also I could not believe the high quality of play in the Division I championship between Southfield Arts and Technology and Belleville, which turned out to be the very last game of those 8 games on the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Just watching that game, there had to be close to 50 future Division I players in that game. And, man, Isaiah Marshall was just off the charts. And it's hard to believe that he outplayed the great Bryce Underwood at Belleville High School. And Underwood was very good in that game, really, really good. But Marshall was just off the charts in that game. Wow, what a game. And what a great weekend for you. You had competitive games all over the place.
It was great. And I think it's really telling to where the state of high school football is in our state. The number of kids that we have playing at the next level, all divisions really all over the country, and certainly, having Belleville and Southfield kind of close up that weekend on Sunday, you saw just an awful lot of talent. And I also have to give a shout out to our Mid-Michigan listeners, the way that Mason and Corunna both showed up for the 2 previous games on Sunday. Those were the best crowds that we've had in nearly a decade. And so, a very successful weekend at Ford Field. And, there's never a finish line in our business. It's always just turning the page, and we turn the page. And, yeah, we're already kind of hitting the halfway mark here of the basketball season. Yeah,
we're just about there. How was the attendance overall at the football finals?
It was as good as it's been in a long time.
Good.
And so part of, what we're trying to speculate in the crowds, especially Brock on Sunday, because we had nothing to compete with. No college games on Sunday. The Lions had already played on Thursday. So was the huge Sunday crowd the matchups? Was it just being on Sunday? We're still trying to kind of work our way through that data and get some good feedback. But, no, very successful weekend. I would love to again, when the college football calendar shifts, I would love to have a Saturday of our games where we're not going up against Michigan and Ohio State at noon on Saturday.
Sure.
But we'll see what the future holds.
All right. Well, let's. That's enough football questions for you. We are in the heart of basketball season, and it will really get ramped up after the first of the year. And you're talking about getting halfway through the schedule. Well, this is the second or third year. Is it the third year of going to 22 games? Is that right?
Yep.
Third year, yes.
Yep.
A lot of coaches, before the change, wanted to go to at least 22 games. A lot of coaches and other people I've talked to would love to see it increase to 24, maybe even 26. You told me a year ago at this time, going from 20 to 22 is kind of a trial balloon. What's the feedback that you're getting from coaches, administrators, and even athletes on that? Would they like to see a change? Because just about everybody I talk to would like to see it even go up even more to 24.
Yeah, it's been a good change. I think with the just continuing to increase games, I think when you talk to coaches, that answer is often going to be yes. I mean, it's almost like asking someone if they like ice cream.
Sure.
You're always going to get an affirmative answer. What we have to be able to balance, and by the way, 22 games is really the midway point of what all the other Big Ten states allow in terms of regular season games. So when we looked at what opportunities are we giving our kids, we wanted them to be on equal footing with what other states are doing within the current Midwest Big Ten footprint. So I think 22 has been good. When you go to 24 or 26, the challenges you then run into is your winter gym space now with wrestling, with those schools that have gymnastics, competitive cheer. So you got to be careful that, if basketball increases their number of games by 15 or 20%, you've also got to keep an eye on how that's going to impact other sports. And we'll see how that all plays out. But 22, it really puts us right now in the middle of the curve when you're looking at what's allowed in the states around us.
Yeah, that's a good point about gym space. There's a lot of people that want to see it go to 24 or even 26, and don't necessarily think about, gym space, gym availability with other sports. I mean, as an executive director, you have to think not just what's best for basketball, what's best for the other sports, because there's a lot of places in the state of Michigan that has limited gym space or gym time. And you don't want, athletes in other sports to practice at inopportune times like, till 10, 11 o'clock at night. You don't want that to happen either. You got to think of everybody, or almost everybody anyway.
It is. You got to always look big picture. And I think the other push with more games, it's a little bit of the AAU mentality. I mean, all spring and summer, kind of the AAU mindset is, well, let's just play more and more games and really not work on skill development and getting much better. And, we're probably a little bit old-fashioned at the high school level, but we still believe that teams and coaches should have time together in a practice setting, and it's not just going to be the AAU treadmill of game after game after game after game.
But on the other hand, the COVID year clearly showed that players can play three varsity basketball games in a week, and it's not going to affect them health-wise too.
Absolutely. So no, it's in our work, again, looking big picture, you're always trying to find the right balance, and that's something we'll continue to do.
Mark Ewell, the executive director of the Michigan High School Athletic Association, joining me here. The shouts for a shot clock in varsity high school basketball, or any basketball, is getting louder in the state of Michigan. I hear about it on not every game that I go to, but a lot of games. I know other states have done it. I see both sides of the argument. It's not just as easy as, let's just get a shot clock and put it in. Logistically, it can be a problem, not necessarily for the bigger schools that have bigger gyms, but for a lot of the smaller schools in northern Michigan, in the UP, in what used to be Class D schools. There's gym space, and you can't just have the scorekeeper do the scoreboard and then do the shot clock. You can't really do that. You got to have somebody just run the shot clock to, limit the errors there. And then also there's a financial consideration as well. Tell us about that.
So you're exactly right. For just the person running the shot clock, and no disrespect to all of our game clock operators out there, but running a shot clock requires a higher skill set to where you've got to sit there with the button and you see the defense deflect a pass. Well, did the defense ever possess the ball?
Right.
Was it just loose? Do I reset, not reset? Did that shot graze the rim, miss the rim? So there's a lot of details. Certainly we can work through that, but I think folks also need to understand that. The questions then become, well, if you're going to do it, is it at the varsity level only? Or are we going to do that at the sub-varsity level? We actually, the 24 games in the Breslin Center last year, our girls and boys semis and finals, we actually charted, how long does it take for a team to first get up a shot? And Brock, in those 24 games, the average time for the first shot to go up was 18 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So for coaches to point and yell and scream and say, well, we need to have a shot clock. I'm sorry, I look at scores every single day, and we're not having the 12 to 6 games where somebody holds the ball for 7.5 minutes. That simply is not happening. And as my colleague to the south, Paul Neidig, who's the director in Indiana, former Division I college basketball player, actually, Brock, he was a college teammate of Kevin Duckworth.
The late Kevin Duckworth, unfortunately.
Yes, well, Eastern Illinois is where they played together. And again, Paul is a basketball guy who works in a basketball state, and Indiana will never go to the shot clock because he's a believer that playing a little slower tempo is a coaching strategy. And you know what? A coach should have all of those tools available to him or her. And so we'll just continue to see where this goes. But it'll be a data-driven decision. And if we keep seeing our semis and finals that the first shot is being taken at 18 seconds, the data really doesn't suggest that we need a shot clock tomorrow.
Mark Ewell, the executive director of the MHSAA. Also, these are small gyms, and you need to have space to put a shot clock operator at the scorer's table. And a lot of gyms, like I said, in northern Michigan and the UP and, Class D formerly Class D gyms, they just don't have the space to do it. And also, money-wise, you can't have one shot clock in the gym. You got to have two, one at each end of the arena, and there's a money factor. Those things aren't cheap.
No, and again, you got to look at big picture, and you got to look at what's the right balance, and does the high school game need the shot clock right now? And I think that answer is open to debate.
And it's something that you guys will continue to debate. And I guess on a related note, there was one major rule change this past offseason. No more 1-and-1 free throws. You went to the rule in women's college basketball, and the rule similar to the NBA, 5 fouls per quarter. And on the 5th foul of each quarter, you're shooting 2 free throws. What's the data that you've seen through, almost half the season so far for both boys and girls? Is it working? And what's the thought process behind changing a rule that has, I think, worked pretty well for the most part before? Why the change?
So this was a national playing rule that now all 50 states are using this year. I will tell you, Brock, personally, I like the 1-and-1. I liked having a little bit of pressure on that shooter to where if you want 2 free throws, you've got to earn it by making the first one. The positive that we've seen with the rule change is in Brock, the games that you broadcast, is we've all seen that game that starts out highly physical in the first quarter or even coming out of the locker room in the third quarter. And now suddenly both teams are in the bonus yet with 2 minutes and a full quarter yet to go. The thing that the change now does is when that first and third quarter ends, you can almost kind of hit the reset button.
Yeah.
And we're not going to have the rest of the game turn into a free throw shooting contest. So that's been a positive change. I think the other thing that the change does is that when a team does have a lead late in the game, it's harder for that team trailing to catch up because now every time you foul them, you're sending them to the line and they're going to get 2 shots. And so the thought process there is, well, by making everything a 2-shot foul, maybe the defense will work harder for steals and not just foul and, try and lengthen the game and send them to the line. So it's still early. We're only about 10 games in to seeing how this plays out. But I think that the early feedback we've got, it's been positive. And we've even heard from some longtime coaches. It's kind of changed their strategy a little bit at the end of the game. So it's kind of keeping everybody on their toes.
Yeah, the only downside about it is I've seen teams be behind, let's say 8 or 10 points at the end of the third quarter. And then they only commit like 1 or 2 fouls through the first 5 minutes of the quarter. So there's 3 minutes to go and you've only committed 2 team fouls and you're down by 5 or 6 points. The other team's just going to play keep away or go to some type of a delay offense, and then you've got to foul a whole bunch at the end of the quarter. And a lot of people say that the 5 foul rule and the shot clock are kind of interchanged. If you had the shot clock, that wouldn't happen. It would force teams to actually play basketball and run their offense. So they are the shot clock and the current rule change are kind of intertwined in a way. I think that's just my I haven't written down as far as research goes, but just seeing what I've seen, it's interesting to see. I guess more information needs to be put out there. We will have a better idea after this season, I guess, how the foul rule change is happening. You just still do have the 5-second closely guarded rule. That's a good change. If you didn't have that, people would just stand out there and not really do anything offensively, and that's not good. You don't want standing around on offense.
No, and by the way, if we did away with the 5-second rule, then you can almost guarantee the shot clock is coming to high school basketball. So,
right.
You've hit it on the head, Brock. That is certainly the balance with the shot clock and then the new team foul rule. And, we'll see where we're at the end of the year.
Yep, absolutely. And again, for people that, I'm sure you've heard the criticism before. Oh, I don't like the MHSAA. Oh, Mark Ewell or whoever's running the thing. The executive director runs a dictatorship. He's the one that dictates all this stuff. No, you don't dictate all this stuff. It's the Michigan High School Representative Council. Tell us about that. This is not a dictatorship like some people still think it is.
No, and I have to be kind of the face and the voice of the organization, but we are governed by a 19-member board, and our board is made up of all school people. It's superintendents, principals, and athletic directors because the MHSAA, we're an association of member schools. So any policy change, any regulation change, any rule change, I have to come up with those proposals. We put them in front of our board, but ultimately that's where decisions get made. And if, somebody needs to personalize, the criticism or their venting, I have really thick skin and I sleep pretty soundly at night. And if I need to be that person, Brock, take a number and stand in line. Again, that's where coming to this job as a former sports official, the thick skin serves me well.
Yeah, you're used to it by now, aren't you?
Absolutely, rhinoceros skin, especially after COVID. That is the truth.
Oh, Man, that was just, oh, man. I know it's always going to bother me that winter season of 2020, at the very least, that winter season wasn't finished. It would have been 2 or 3 more weeks, and you'd have been able to finish it, and it would have worked out. But you know what? Fowlerville boys basketball coach Jim Jonas told me, I said, man, it's always going to bother me that they didn't finish it. And he said, yeah, Brock, but we didn't know. We didn't know at the time. And he's exactly right. Mark, if you would have finished that season and somebody would have gotten sick and or died, it's lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. It sucks that you didn't get to finish, but, you know, the negatives outweighed the positives on that one, although it still bothers me.
It bothers me, too, but it was that March of 2020, Brock, was a time of no good options for anybody. And, it is what it is, and you've just tried to now learn from it. And, hopefully when that next crisis, jumps in front of us somewhere down the road, that we'll be better prepared.
Last question before I let you go, and then you go be a parent to your daughter, Maddie Ewell at DeWitt. They're terrific guard there. I know you got to go to Byron Center. So last question. This year, 2024, this season 2024, is the 99th boys basketball tournament ever in this history of the state of Michigan. That means 2025 is the 100th boys basketball tournament. Anything planned special for that, or am I putting a seed in your head right here, right now that, hey, maybe we should do something special for it?
We've got a working group in our office that we are going to celebrate our 100th year throughout the entire athletic school year next year. Everything from our logo will look a little different. Our trophies, our medals. So we're going to incorporate the 100th birthday. I know you just celebrated a birthday yourself this week, Brock. And,
yes.
We're going to celebrate our anniversary next year over all 3 seasons, and very unique. You know, there's not many organizations that have been doing what they're doing for 100 years. I'm the 5th full-time director in the 100 years, so we've had lots of continuity in terms of leadership, and we're really looking forward to celebrating a great century next school year.
Yeah, it'll be really something. Looking forward to seeing what you have planned for that. Mark Ewell, the executive director of the MHSAA. Mark, thanks so much for coming on. I did keep you on a little bit longer, so thanks for coming on. Go be a parent for a few hours, and thanks again. We'll talk soon.
We'll do. And Brock, I know there's only 2 of us in town. Go Blue on Monday.
Take
care.
Yes, thank you, sir. Mark Ewell, the executive director of the Michigan High School Athletic Association. We thank him for coming on fairly short notice as well. We're going to take the next segment here. We're going to talk about the games that occurred this week. There really weren't that many, so we'll go over that, go over some of the standings and records that the teams are going, both boys and girls. There were close to 20 games, I guess, about 15 games this week. That doesn't account for the games today, and we'll give you the schedule that is going on today. It's all coming up. High School Rewind, and also Brian Calloway. He's going to be coming up in about 15 minutes or so. Get his thoughts on everything that went on this week and preview the next week as well. You're listening to High School Rewind on the game 730 AM WVFN and the Lansing Sports Network, brought to you by Dowding Industries and by the Lansing Sports Commission.
WVFN.
Brock Palmbush here, High School Rewind on the game 730 AM WVFN. Now brought to you by the Lansing Sports Commission and by Jeff and Chris Metz and Dowding Industries. Yes, Dowding Industries. We're always interested in individuals that have the drive and desire to be successful in work and in life. Check them out at dowdingindustries.com. You may find a successful future here. That's Jeff and Chris Metz. And the Lansing Sports Commission, no matter the sport, the Lansing Sports Commission can make your next event your best event. Plan on something greater. Find out more at lansingsports.org. All right, let's get to the action that occurred this week. Not much going on, but it was mostly in tournaments. There weren't very many standalone games this week, and there's only a few games today, and we'll go over the schedule here in just a minute. There were 2 boys games on December 20th. There was nothing locally December 26th, day after Christmas. But on December 27th, Everett fell to Benton Harbor 69-54 in the Earl McKee Benton Harbor Holiday Classic. So Everett fell to 3-3 on the season. But in the Detroit Public School League Holiday Tournament, which goes on all the time, East Lansing went down to the Detroit area and beat Detroit Martin Luther King 60-41. East Lansing has blown everybody out so far. They are now 6-0 on the season. They're going to play a real conference-heavy schedule coming up in January and February. Oh, yes, by the way, if you want to see my picks for the top 10 teams in the area in both boys and girls basketball, go to the game 730am.com, LansingSportsNetwork.com. They are up there now. If you don't automatically see them on the front page there, which you should, but if for some reason you don't, just search for it and type in high school polls for December 27th, I believe, which I did earlier this week. You can find it. I will not be doing a poll next week because of the limited amount of games this week, but after that, starting on January 8th, it'll be a weekly thing until the end of the regular season, which will be the end of February, early March. So there you go with that. And then, of course, after the entire season is over, after the state tournament's over, I will do one final poll there. There were a handful of boys' games on December 28th. Morris fell to Durand 80-44, just a standalone game there. Morris off to a rough start this season. They are 1-6. Fowler was beaten by Muskegon Mona Shores in the semifinals of the Cornerstone University Holiday Tournament 63-25. They're currently 4-4 on the season. Waverly is off to a terrific start this season. They've gotten great performances from a bunch of people so far. Waverly beat River Rouge in the North Farmington Holiday Jamboree. That was 87-77. I've told you about Derek Thomas, the second, the terrific sophomore there for Coach Rod Watts, off to a great start, but he's now getting help by Deontay Pfeiffer. He's had a 30-point game earlier this season. Well, he had another one against River Rouge. 39 points for Deontay Pfeiffer. I tell you what, if Pfeiffer gets going, and he got off to a little bit of a slow start at the first few games of the season, but Derek Thomas II was great. They beat River Rouge, who's a perennial power, as everyone knows. Waverly off to a terrific start. They are 6-2 on the season. Mason hosting their own tournament once again with the change from 20 to 22 games, allowing these schools to have hometown tournaments. And Mason hosted it this week. It was 73-53 over Walled Lake Western in the semifinals. Played very well there. Case and Carswell playing very, very well for Coach Lee Cheney. Parma Western defeated Olivet in the Spring Arbor Shot Clock Classic. They lost 58-49. However, Bo Lincoln's having a very good season there. Olivet off to a 4-3 start. That was on December 28th. On the 29th, which was last night, at the Reed City tournament, St. John's went up to Reed City and beat Fremont 63-31 in the semifinals there. They are off to a 4-5 start this season. Holt lost Hudsonville 62-42 in the Hudsonville High School Showcase. Holt off to a rough start this season, 1-5. Their only victory was on opening night against Sexton. In the finals of that Mason tournament, it was Howell beating Mason 62-55. This is a game I went to last night. It was 44-44. It was close all the way. Howell had a 1-point lead at the end of the first quarter. Mason had a 1-point lead at the half, and it was tied at the end of three quarters. 44 all. But then Howell simply better in the fourth quarter there for the Howell Highlanders, and they got really good performances from a bunch of people. Curtis Dell, he had 26 points. Let me count myself up here. 16, 18, 21, 23, 25 points, my bad. 25 points, 6 rebounds there. Jalen Hicks, 14 points, 3 rebounds. He had 4 big free throws in the final couple of minutes to cement that game. 14 points, 3 rebounds. He was 6 for 7 from the free throw line. Daniel Hampton was very, very good, too. He had 12 points and 13 rebounds there for Howell. They out-rebounded Mason 27-21, 16 of 19 from the floor, or from the free throw line, rather. Mason, led by Kason Carswell. He's been their best player so far. He had 24 points in the loss last night. Also, Luke Marlin, he had 16 points in support, and Levi Stambaugh had 10. He had 8 of his 10 in the second half. Mason 12 for 15 from the free throw line, but tough loss there for Mason. They slipped to 6-2 on the season. They will get back into the league schedule coming up next week. Looking at the other action from last night, DeWitt scored in the final seconds. I understand from Coach Bill Flannery, as I bring up his Twitter here, it was an exciting game. DeWitt beating Sparta 50-48, and I understand it went down into the final seconds. And I believe, if I remember Coach Flannery right, as I bring it up here. Hey, this is live radio, folks. Yes, Nevison, Zach Nevison, scoring on a jumper at the buzzer. DeWitt goes to Sparta and wins 50-48. Congratulations to them. Garrett, let's see here. Yeah, there you go, 50-48. They did not lead at all the entire game, except when the final buzzer sounded. Zach Nevison, the winner, off an Elliott Larner deflection, and DeWitt will be going on break this coming week. DeWitt off to a terrific start this season. They are 8-1. Their only loss was to a very good Okemos squad, a game you heard here on the game 7:30 a.m. WVFN a week and a half ago. And the final game that occurred last night, it was Pewamo Westphalia going to Williamston and winning 59-43. I understand that Grady Eklund had another terrific game, over 30 points. It was either 38 or 39 points. And congratulations to them. That is one whale of a performance there. Just a sophomore is a Grady Eklund, and so congratulations to them. That was the action that was going on this week. A handful of games that are going on today. East Lansing plays River Rouge, who Waverly beat earlier this week. Fowler is playing in the consolation game of that tournament that they were playing in earlier this week at the Cornerstone Holiday Tournament. Okemos is playing Dexter. Now, this is a treat for Okemos because they're playing at Little Caesars Arena against Dexter. This is in advance of the Pistons game against the Toronto Raptors. And I got to tell you, the way the Pistons are playing, although last couple of games are an exception, the Okemos-Dexter game probably be more exciting than the Pistons and the Raptors. Man, Pistons lost 28 in a row. If they lose that game, they'll set the all-time NBA record for most losses ever. St. John's is playing Reed City in the finals of the Reed City tournament. St. John's off to a slow start, but playing a heck of a lot better recently. They are now 4-5 on the year. And Lansing Catholic, who's off to a slow start this season, they are 1-4 overall. They are playing Waterford Mott today. So those are the games today, and then everybody's off until at least January 3rd. So they're going to be taking tomorrow and the first, and then the second off, and then they'll be playing games on January 3rd. As far as the girls' action goes, there were only 2 games this week. One was on December 27th, and Lansing Catholic, the defending state champions in Division II, lost to Detroit Mumford 48-43. Hard to believe, looking at the records now. Lansing Catholic, the defending champions, 2-3 to start the season. However, they are playing an absolutely brutal schedule. The 3 games they lost were really, really good teams from outstate Michigan. The 2 wins they've gotten, they've won pretty easily here in the area over Williamston and Charlotte in league play. And they'll be getting back into playing local teams coming up in the next week or so. And yes, January 9th, I believe that's a Tuesday. Yes, it is. It's a Tuesday coming up. Portland is at Lansing Catholic in girls basketball. That's going to be for the CAAC White Lead. Portland undefeated right now at 6-0. Jason Hayes' squad, very, very good to start. The Thalen sisters, Malia and Lily, leading Portland so far this season. That was just the Catholic game was just one game on December 27th, losing to Detroit Mumford 48-43. And then last night it was Williamston over Pewamo Westphalia 52-22. Williamston now 4-3 on the season. They're leading the CAAC Red with a 3-0 record. Pewamo Westphalia falling to 1-4 on the season. A bit of a struggle for them so far this season. So that was the action this week. Oh yes, on the girls' side, let's take a look at the action today on the girls' side. Just one game, and you heard me talk to a parent, Mark Ewell, executive director of the MHSAA. DeWitt is at Byron Center today. That's the only game today, and then there is action will resume after the first of the year. January 2nd, Waverly against West Bloomfield, and so on and so forth about that. Some of the other action coming up next week on the girls' side. East Lansing is at Lapeer on the 3rd. Not many games up until the 5th, and it's a bit of a limited schedule on January 5th. Fowler hosting Lansing Christian. Holt hosting Coldwater, Olivet at Ionia, Eaton Rapids at Lansing Catholic, Stockbridge at Leslie, Lakewood at Portland. That looks to be a good game there between two of the top teams in the CAAC White. Both of those teams undefeated in league play at 2-0 on the season. Yeah, after the first of the year, we're going to get a lot of conference games coming up. As far as the boys' action coming up next week, some of the games on January 3rd. That's when they will resume. Chelsea is at Williamston. Hastings is at Bath. Bath off to a good Bath's really struggling. I'm looking at the wrong one. Bath off to a rough start this season on the boys' side, but they do get to host Hastings in that great little gym that they have at Bath. On the 4th, Potterville's at Wyoming Tri-Unity. Springport is at Vermontville Maple Valley. Probably the top game on the boys' side next week. It's the two undefeated teams in the CAAC White. Charlotte is at Sexton. In fact, myself and Eric are looking at that one to potentially broadcast next week here on the game, 7:30 a.m. WVFN. East Lansing hosts Grand Blanc. Coming up on the 5th, mentioned Coldwater is at Holt. Olivet is at Ionia. Stockbridge at Leslie. St. John's, improving St. John's squad is at Mason. And again, Lakewood is at Portland. That's that doubleheader, boys and girls there. Portland's boys off to a good start as well. They made it into the top 10 poll on the boys' side this week. They're off to a 5-1 start. And then on the 6th on the boys' side, Waverly is at Grand Rapids, Ottawa Hills. Wyoming is at Hazlitt. Wyoming Tri-Unities at Lansing Catholic. Corunna at St. John's. And Williamston plays Wyoming Godwin Heights. So that's just some of the action there. Take a look at some of the records here. Let's start with the boys. East Lansing and Langsburg continues to be the only undefeated teams. East Lansing at 6-0, Langsburg at 6-0. Langsburg's won 34 of their last 36 games, dating back to the end of the 2021-22 season. 34 of their last 36 games. Pretty impressive. And they got that great win over Pewamo Westphalia on the road in overtime earlier this season. A number of one-loss teams out there. Okemos and DeWitt are both with one loss. DeWitt 8-1. Okemos is 7-1. Charlotte is 6-1. Portland is at 5-1 there. And so there you go with that. Some of the girls' records. A few more undefeated teams. DeWitt 6-0. Portland is 6-0 on the season. Dansville 4-0. Bath is 5-0, and Ovid Elsie is 6-0. One-loss teams, not too many of them out there. St. John's is 5-1 on the year, and Fowler is 4-1, and also Morris is 3-1 on the season. So those are some of the records, and that's what's going on there. Coming up on the other side of this break, we'll talk with Brian Calloway, the prep sports editor of the Lansing State Journal and LSJ.com. It's all coming up on High School Rewind on the game, 7:30 a.m. WVFN and the Lansing Sports Network, brought to you by the Lansing Sports Commission and by Jeff and Chris Metz and Dowding Industries.
Lansing Sports Leader, the game, 7:30 a.m.
Well, welcome back to High School Rewind on the game, 7:30 a.m. WVFN. Brought to you by Jeff and Chris Metz and Dowding Industries and by the Lansing Sports Commission. We're now happy to be joined on a weekly basis with Brian Calloway, the prep sports editor of the Lansing State Journal, LSJ.com. Brian, a light week this week, as it usually is between Christmas and New Year's. A lot of holiday tournaments, a lot of holiday jamborees, showcases, and whatnot. And only 3 girls' games this week. Let's start there. Only 3 girls' games this week, and one of them is today. And just talked with a parent of one of the players, Mark Ewell, executive director of the MHSAA. DeWitt is playing at Byron Center today. But the earlier games this week, noteworthy. Lansing Catholic, the defending Division II state champions. They're 2-3 on the season right now. And if you look at it without looking at the opponents, you think, oh, cause for concern. My goodness, state champs, they got almost everybody back, and they're off to a 2-3 start. But it's a little more complicated than that, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely it is. And, I think for them, they've kind of understood that, this was a process, and it's not about kind of where you are when you start. It's kind of where you are when you finish. And, they wanted to test themselves, and they have tested themselves against teams like, Mumford and Detroit Renaissance in the early stages of the season, just to kind of, get tested by some different style of teams and teams you don't normally see. So, I think this is all by design for Lansing Catholic as part of the bigger picture, just to kind of end up ultimately where they want to get. And, as you look at last year, they didn't have the like a perfect start or anything like that. I mean, they took some losses early against some tough competition early on in the season as well too. But then you look at how they finished up the season and ended up with the Division II state championship, and obviously those tough challenges that they had in the early part of the season paid dividends when they went through a difficult state tournament run when they knocked off teams like Hazlitt and Frankenmuth and Chelsea and some of those other teams they knocked off on the way to the state title last year. So, I mean, I think this is by design. Nothing to be alarmed about. Just kind of what they wanted to do to kind of prepare themselves for their ultimate goal of trying to repeat as state champions.
Yeah, that was the most noteworthy game this week. Williamston also beat Pewamo Westphalia 52-22. Man, usually there's a lot more girls' games involving area teams in between Christmas and New Year's, and there's only 3. The Catholic game was on the 27th. Williamston and PW played last night, and DeWitt and Byron Center play today. That's interesting. That's just a quirk in the schedule. Just I don't know.
Obviously, people taking some time off to kind of regroup, over the holiday while
sure.
People were out of school, because a lot of people were out of school until the 8th around here. So,
True.
So I mean, just kind of a product of the break, and obviously, the way that Christmas fell this year as well too. Teams were playing up until the 21st or 22nd,
mm-hmm.
So that was late last week that teams were playing until as well too. So I mean, I think just kind of a normal thing, quick of the schedule that typically happens. So.
Yeah, most teams like to get a week break around the holidays, whatever, no matter what it is. And they're not even practicing as much either. All right, on the boys' side now, East Lansing hadn't played a whole heck of a lot of games early in the season. I think they went about 10 or even 12 days without playing a game. But now they're getting back into it. They're 6-0 right now. They are looking really, really strong. They have wiped everybody out that they have played so far, and they play perennial state power River Rouge, who Waverly beat earlier this week. East Lansing's got the most talent in the area, and they're starting to show it now.
Oh, yeah, they definitely are. I mean, really, we've seen it from the get-go in what Ray Mitchell, Coach Ray Mitchell calls his big 3 with J.L. Branson, Cameron Hudson, and K.J. Torbert. And, those 3 have delivered, all season. One of them has pretty much gone off at least every night for them and, kind of been a standout. I mean, a week and a half ago, it was K.J. Torbert, against Everett. Cameron Hudson has had some big games these last few games for East Lansing as well, too. I think against Saline late last week, and then he had another big game over this past week as well, too, to help East Lansing to another win. But, yeah, I mean, they definitely have looked the part so far in the early stages of the season with, kind of what they've shown. And, obviously, I think it was Thursday they beat Detroit MLK by 19.
Yeah.
That was a pretty impressive win with, with Cameron Hudson going for 25, I believe, in that game as well, too. So, yeah, they've looked very impressive early on in the season.
Another team that's looked very impressive is Waverly. They went and beat River Rouge 87-77 on Thursday. We've talked about Derek Thomas a lot because he's off to a great start, just a sophomore. But now what everybody thought was going to be their best player, Deontay Pfeiffer, he's starting to warm up too. He just had his second 30-point game of the season on Thursday night. All he did was score 39 points against River Rouge, who's seemingly good every single year.
Yeah, obviously, Dante Pfeiffer, he's been a guy that's been on varsity since his freshman year, and he's obviously showcased his talent since then. And, he's definitely one of the best players in this area. And, obviously that's a pretty huge performance that he had on Thursday for Waverly. But, yeah, I think this is a team that's going to be dangerous as well, too, especially if, he can play like that. And, they get more big games of Derek Thomas and some of those other guys as well, too.
Brian Calloway, prep sports editor of the Lansing State Journal, LSJ.com, joining me here. Mason held their annual tournament. They won on Thursday over Walled Lake Western, 73-53. I know Case and Carswell had a big game, and he had a big game last night against Howell, but Mason lost to Howell in the finals in a game I was at. This was a close ball game for 3 quarters. It was tied at the end of 3 quarters, and Howell was just simply better in the 4th quarter, and they were able to get the win. Curtis Dell for Howell had 25 points. Daniel Hampton, 12 points, 13 rebounds, and Jalen Hicks, their very good guard. He had 14 points, and he hit 4 big free throws in the final stretch there. Tough loss for Mason. They don't like to lose their hometown tournament. But, man, Case and Carswell has gone from the football field. and he's looking good right now. He's playing very well for Mason, who falls to 6-2 with that tough loss. But, hey, you know what? Howell's one of the biggest schools in terms of enrollment in the state of Michigan. There's no shame in losing to Howell. That Howell team's good.
Yeah, and I believe Mason was also without Caleb Parrish, who's been away.
Yep.
Was out of town on trip. So, I mean, that's obviously one of their big pieces that they didn't have in the lineup for the tournament as well, too. So, but, you know, like you said about Kason Carswell, he's really been one of the more impressive players so far to start the season as well, too. I mean, with some of the performances that he's delivered, I feel like there's like at least 3 or 4 20 games with at least 20 points he's had. I mean, I think he almost had a triple-double in the game Thursday that they won over Walled Lake Western as well, too. So he's just been off to a great start to the season for them. And I think a lot of people, when you looked at Mason, I mean, the people that you were talking about was Luke Marlon and then Caleb Parrish, kind of with what they were able to do last year, and then Levi Stanbaugh. But, you know, Kason Carswell has definitely, you know, made a name for himself, you know, with what he's been able to do in the early part of the season for Mason.
Let's move down. Also, Olivet lost in the Spring Arbor Shot Clock Classic to Parma Western 58-49. That was the 28th. Last night, we talked about Howell and Mason, so we'll skip that. In the Hudsonville Showcase, Holt lost to Hudsonville 62-42. St. John's got off to a slow start this season, but I think they've won 4 in a row, looking really, really good right now. They beat Fremont 63-31 in the Reed City tournament. They're going to play in the finals later today. DeWitt, Zach Nevison, scored at the buzzer to beat Sparta 50-48, and a good win for PW, going on the road to Williamston and winning by 16. Your thoughts on the games last night?
Yeah, you know, the PW win was pretty impressive for them. And then, you know, DeWitt, I mean, they've found a knack of finding ways to win some of these tight games this season. And obviously, you know, being able to do that against Sparta with the clutch play with, you know, Elliot Larner,
right,
assisting on the game-winning basket from some Zach Nevison as well, too. So, yeah, very impressive for DeWitt as well, too. I mean, this is a team that's had a pretty solid season as well, too, with considering what they lost in a big piece like Bryce Kearns. I mean, only lost, you know, to Okemos so far in the season. But, yeah, DeWitt's been impressive. You know, Pewamo Westphalia has been impressive, too, considering what they lost as well, too, with a star player like Jameson Eklund, who's now at Lansing Community College, and his younger brother has been one of the key players for them. Yeah,
and I believe he had 38 last night for PW in that big win there. Yeah, just a sophomore is Grady Eklund. All right, some of the action today. East Lansing plays River Rouge. Fowler plays Marshall in the consolation game at the Cornerstone Classic. Okemos plays at Little Caesars Arena against Dexter. I got to tell you, that's going to be more entertaining than the Pistons-Raptors game that's later on that night. I mean, 28 straight losses, come on. And St. John's is also, St. John's is playing Reed City in the championship of the Reed City Classic. And Lansing Catholic off to a slow start this season, only 1-4, playing Waterford Mutt. Just your quick thoughts on that game before we preview, take a look at next week.
Yeah, you know, big deal for Okemos to be able to play at Little Caesars Arena. And I think it's pretty cool. I mean, I've seen a lot of high school programs have been able to play games on that court. You know, and it's not just, you know, certain teams from the Metro Detroit area. There's teams from out throughout the state that have been able to get the chance to play on that court. I think Potterville did it last year, and I think they might be doing it again this year as well, too. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty cool thing for kids to be able to, you know, go to Little Caesars and play a high school basketball game there.
All right, let's preview some of the action next week. On the girls' side, you know, taking a look at it here, you know, kind of a light schedule because like you said, a lot of schools don't go back until January 8th, so it's a light schedule. East Lansing is at Lapeer on the 3rd. Also looking, Mason is at St. John's. Holt hosts Coldwater. Lansing Catholic hosts Eaton Rapids. Stockbridge at Leslie. Lakewood at Portland. That looks to be a good one as they get back into CAAC White play next Friday. This is just the girls basketball. Lakewood and Portland, two of the top teams in the CAAC White.
Yeah, you know, and Portland has been very impressive early on in the season as well, too. You know, obviously, you know, knocking out East Lansing and Holt just the week before Christmas.
Yep.
So, I mean, Malia and Lily Thalen have obviously been very big players for them so far with the start that they've gotten off to. So, yeah, I mean, Portland's a team that is looking like it could be right there with Lansing Catholic and the CAAC White, and Lakewood's been off to a impressive start as well, too.
And quickly with the boys, we got a couple minutes left here. The top game and the game that me and Eric are looking at next Friday night, Charlotte at Sexton. You've been telling me about Somerville, the really good player at Sexton, but Charlotte's got off to a really good start too. The two top teams in the CAAC White battling for the lead next Friday night at Sexton High School.
Yeah, and, Charlotte, obviously the defending league champion in that league, and, Sexton's a team with impressive guards like Keyshawn Somerville.
Yep, Keyshawn Somerville, yep.
It was a team that, was maybe considered the preseason favorite in that league as well, too. So, I think that will be an impressive matchup just to kind of see how things stack up in the CAAC White with those two teams. And, Olivet and Portland are also kind of intriguing teams in that league as well, too.
Yeah, very good league. Not quite as good, not quite as deep as the CAAC Blue, but still a pretty good league there. And we'll talk about this more coming up next week. Brian Calloway, Prep Sports Editor, Lansing State Journal, LSJ.com. Thank you so much. Talk to you next week.
Hey, sounds good, Brock. Thanks for having me.
Brian Calloway, Prep Sports Editor of the Lansing State Journal. We got a busy day here coming up on the Lansing Sports Network, Town Square Media group of stations. Coming up at 1 o'clock, 1240 WJIM, Classic Rock 94.9 MMQ. MSU men's basketball playing Indiana State today. At 3:45 here on WVFN, Michigan State women's basketball. They are playing today, 3:45 pregame here. Nachos and Kneecaps, live and local Lions pregame show before the Lions-Cowboys game. We'll hit the air at 6:10 or so here on WVFN and 94.9 MMQ. And then the Detroit Lions and Dallas Cowboys will play 7:10 network pregame here on WVFN and on WMMQ. Got to thank our guests, Mark Ewell, Executive Director of the MHSAA, and also got to thank Brian Calloway, Prep Sports Editor of the Lansing State Journal. Thank you for listening. We will be back next week, 10 a.m. until 11, and we very likely will have a high school broadcast coming up next Friday. One of the game I'm looking at right now, looking at Charlotte at Sexton for the CAAC White lead. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next week. This has been High School Rewind on the game 730 AM WVFN and the Lansing Sports Network.